Hi, welcome to Infused Eats, the cooking show where everything is infused, especially me, your host, Matt Lamb. Today we're making Scottish shortbread cookies. This episode is sponsored by the Mighty Fast Herbal Infuser. You can save money on my favorite herbal infuser device with the code RuffHouse at theherbalinfuser.com. Now here's what you need. You need a half a cup of infused butter and then a half a cup of not infused unsalted butter, 3/4 cups of powdered sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, a cup of rolled oats, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and for the topping, that's optional, you need a tablespoon of infused butter, half a cup of dark chocolate, and 1/4 cup of toasted chopped nuts. You can find all that at infusedeats.com as well. Now let's get started. The first step is going to be to infuse your butter. I'm recommending using the herbal infuser. If you do that, you want to make sure in any way you decarb in the oven at 250 degrees for 35 minutes for your cannabis before you make it, whatever method you're using. If you're using the Mighty Fast, you mix that in your butter into the machine, follow the directions there. It's simple to make that way. But however you make it, the first step is going to be to soften your butter. So you take your butter out of the refrigerator and measure out a half a cup, which is 1 stick of butter of the other butter, and just let it come to room temperature. And then on your can of butter, let it get soft enough to spoon it and measure it out. Press it into your cup so you know you're getting a half a cup, and just let that come up to room temperature. It only takes about an hour just sitting out. And do that before you get started. Okay, and this recipe is super simple. If you have your can of butter and you have it softened, you can do this recipe in literally like 10 minutes and you're putting it in the oven. Okay, so once you have your butter softened and measured out, you're good to go. And you see I left a tablespoon back for the topping. Okay, so now we're going to take our first, 5 ingredients, and we're going to put our flour into a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you could do this in like a cookie dough. But if you do that, you want to chop your rolled oats or use the quick oats instead of the old-fashioned oats. Okay, but we're putting the oats, the flour, the sugar, the regular butter, and infused butter, as well as our salt, all into the food processor. So that's basically all of the ingredients for the cookies except for the topping ingredient. This is going to be one of the simplest ways to make cookies or any kind of recipe, and they're delicious. All right, so we have everything into our hopper of our food processor, and now we're just going to start pulsing it. Just pulsing. It's going to eventually start kind of coming into a crumbly mixture, and eventually it'll kind of clog up and seem like it's stopped blending. But we're not going to be quite done yet, though. So once you get to that consistency where it starts to stop in the blender and it doesn't like it's really doing anything anymore, you want to open it up, kind of just take a butter knife or something and just kind of press everything around, mix it up a little bit by hand, and then go through the process again. It may take about a total of 2 or 3 minutes in the food processor doing this. And I did it 3 different times, the first time and then the second time. And the third time I took the blades out, pushed it down a little bit more. And when I put it back in, you can see the dough is getting a little bit more moist each time and a little bit more of the doughy consistency. And by the third time, my dough was just like I wanted it. Nice and smooth, little bitty flakes of the oats still in there, but nice and smooth dough. Okay, and now here comes the best part about this recipe as opposed to making shortbreads. All you need is an 8-inch cake pan, round cake pan or pie pan. I like the cake pan because it has the flat edges on it. Just go ahead and spray that with some cooking spray and put all of the dough right into the pan. No need for rolling it out and cutting it into little circles or anything like that. We're doing this like Scottish literature, thrifty and to the point. So we put that into our pan, and I used the butter knife to spread it out as best I could, but then if you just start wetting your knife or use a spatula, and it's a lot easier to get it smoother on the top. So just wet your knife and get it nice and smooth, spread out all the way into the pan. Look at that, already looks good. And now we're going to take the same wet knife and we're going to cut it kind of like you do a pizza from one end to the other. But unlike a pizza, we're not going to cut it necessarily all the way through to the bottom, but you do want to cut it 1/2 to 2/3 of the way through the dough there. And wetting the knife between each slice will keep you from making it really, really messy. Now, you can slice this as many as you want. I would recommend at least 12. I'm going with 16 slices. And you can see there, once you get it sliced, you're pretty much ready. Like I said, not all the way through, just score it like halfway through or to 2/3 through at the most. Okay, now we're putting our oven on 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you have a timer on it, set it for about 40 minutes. Make sure you keep an eye on it. It may not take quite that long. And there we go. We're going to put that in there and just let it bake all alone, undisturbed, except for about halfway through. About halfway through, especially if you're using a small oven like this or an uneven oven, you might want to give it like a half a turn just to put the front to the back. So we get a nice, even cooking across the top of it. And there you can see it took me about 35 minutes in this little oven, and wow, it turned out really pretty. Take it out when it's got a nice golden brown top on it, just like that. Okay, the next step is to let it cool off. You want to let this cool off like almost completely, where you can very easily handle it, but there's still a little bit warm on the bottom and hasn't quite gotten brittle yet, but definitely barely warm. Okay, and so then you're able to hopefully easily slide it out of your pan like we did there. And you'll see that the little indentations that you make are a little bit vague now, but if you look closely, you'll be able to see the scoring that you made easily. And if you take a sharp knife and go through that scoring where those marks are, you'll be lucky to come out with a nice crisp edge just like that. Of course, you're not going to serve it half of a wafer at a time, so we're going ahead and cut that all the way down into the 16 slices that we made. And just be real careful, but if you did the scoring good, like I said before, you should be able to retain the sharp edges on every piece like that. Every piece of ours came out just right. There was no broken pieces or anything like that. I was kind of worried about the cutting. Don't worry about it. Now, you could eat those cookies just like they are there, but we always like to go the extra step here at RuffHouse. So I'm melting that additional tablespoon of infused butter that I had over a double boiler, which is just a pan, with another pan set over the top of it with a little bit of boiling water in the bottom, not touching the bottom of your pan. Okay, and so I've melted the butter, and now I'm adding in about a half a cup of chocolate chips of your choice. I'm using Ghirardelli dark chocolate because I want it to be sort of, that more bitter sort of taste of chocolate. And so just melt that down till it's nice and smooth and combine it together with your butter. It's as simple as that for making a basic chocolate infusion. So now this is the point where you can get creative, or like I said, you could eat them just the way they are. These are a delicious shortbread cookie. That little oatmeal flavor in there really adds a nice graininess and texture, sort of an old-fashioned feel to it. But if you dip it in chocolate part of the way like that, put some toasted chopped nuts on top of it, it'll blow you away how good these things taste. I really love shortbread cookies anyway, and one of my older shortbread recipes was a favorite among people. This one's even better. You might also try it sprinkling a little sea salt on top of the chocolate for a little bit of a variation. Mix it up, serve these on a tray at your party, and your guests are going to be really, really happy. These also are really great for breakfast in the morning with a cup of coffee. I mean, you just really can't go wrong with this recipe. So simple, so easy, so delicious. I hope you try it out. It really is one of my favorites. They're so buttery and rich, and I really recommend using half infused and half not infused butter to be able to retain that flavor. It really is a great recipe and plenty strong enough, believe me. Again, I would like to thank the guys at Mighty Fast Herbal Infuser for sponsoring this video. You can save money on the Herbal Infuser with the code RuffHouse at theherbalinfuser.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button and check us out at RuffHouseStudios.com for hundreds more infused recipes just for you. This is Matt at RuffHouse. Thanks for watching.